But where are you really from?
A podcast about the Asian American struggle.
Hey guys, I'm Angela Lynn.
And I'm Jesse Lynn, and welcome back to another episode of But Where Are You Really From?
We have a special guest with us today, Ryan. Wait, actually, do you go by Ryan Alex Holmes or Ryan Holmes?
Ryan Alexander Holmes. It's almost like a British name or
shiz.
something like that.
I love it. Okay, Ryan, how would you describe yourself? You're part actor, TikTok celebrity, like what's your
wow.
go-to?
Celebrity. I just like to express myself. How about
Okay.
that? Like I like to fully investigate my identity and who I am and share it with the world in whatever medium that I can get my hands on
Well, I love
to
it.
do so. Yeah.
Awesome.
And our signature question to start things off. But where are you really from? And or what are you?
I'm a citizen of Blasian. Ever heard of it?
Tell us
Ever heard of
more.
it? It's a country that I founded just now for all the Blasians out there because we don't have a home country.
That's
We've
true.
never had one.
That's true.
When people ask where are you from, a Blasian has to make up an answer that's, not adequate, I feel like, for them. And
Very
I've just
true.
and so I'm from Blasian. That's where I'm from.
Okay, I love that. We're having Ryan on to talk about a lot of cool things, but one of the main things is that we've never been able to explore this like multicultural, biracial identity. So I think we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. But for those who don't know you, so you're Blasian, but that is so wide as well.
Yeah.
So like what kind of Asian?
This is even interesting too.
Yes.
Man, I mean, I'm African American, so from, slavery. That's my dad's side, and my mom's side is Chinese, but from Taiwan. Yeah, I know you guys are both. You're both
Yes.
from Taiwan, right? I do get flack sometimes because people are like, they see the Taiwan flag that I proudly wave and put on my social media handles.
Sure.
And they're like, when you say Chinese, we know you mean Taiwanese. And I'm like, no, I don't. I mean Chinese. Because my mother is ethnically Chinese, but grew up in Taiwan. And you guys know the history. And I don't know your family background, but my Chinese family, came to Taiwan after the war. You know what I mean?
I see.
And so they're that, and if I do identify, it's Chinese Taiwanese, but that's always been contentious. I don't consider myself under the laws of whatever that identity is to the people who are telling me how to identify. I'm going to identify however I want.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that like people will tell me as if I don't know my own family history, what I need to identify myself as, instead of asking like, I see the Taiwan flag, but you say Chinese. Can you explain why that is? Instead of being like, how dare you say that? You don't even know your history. It's like, come on, man. Come
Yeah.
on.
That's interesting. You're saying other Asian people are like sorting you into one of the two or like forcing you to pick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, those are the ones that accept me as Asian.
That's so, you know what? Because we talk a lot about how like non-Asian people also like to put us in boxes.
Yeah,
But on
yeah.
the flip side, we also talk about how there's generally like this imposter syndrome. Like you don't really fit in
Oh,
anywhere.
oh
Like,
yeah, for
because
sure.
when I go back to Asia, like people can tell that I'm not
Yeah, I
like
heard
from
that. You said
there.
that in a previous episode. You're just like,
Yeah.
they can clock it right away. Like,
Yeah, we're like, we look similar, but then people can tell. They're like, you're not from here.
you smell different. I don't know. You ain't from here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I feel you, man. I felt that when you said that because I'm just like, I guess mine's another layer, right? Because I love to tell people like, I do look Asian. Like, just because I don't look Asian to you does not mean that I don't look Asian because I literally am Asian, you know? It's in my blood. It's what I actually am. So to say that I don't look it, you could say I don't look like the stereotypical idea of Asian. Yeah, sure. But you better say that because I am Asian, so therefore I do look Asian.
Hey everyone, we love doing this podcast, and if you enjoy our episodes, we'd really appreciate if you could support us in any number of ways. First is by subscribing to us, rating us, and reviewing us on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. The second is by telling a friend. Third is following us on Instagram at whereareyoufrompod. Fourth is buying our merch on our website. And fifth is by joining our Patreon community. And you can find more about all of this by looking at our link in bio at our Instagram. Again, the handle is at whereareyoufrompod. Thank you. Did your family like take you back to the motherland frequently, or when was like the first time that you went?
I went the first time to the motherland, Taiwan, like 2.5 years ago.
Damn.
Wow.
How was that?
My mom hadn't been back since she left, which
Oh
she
my
left
God.
after she went to NTU, National Taiwan University. She was a nerd. And then she went to another nerd school. She went to UPenn.
Oh, wow.
And then she never went back until she went with us. When we went there, I guess what I expected was like when my dad took me back to, you know, where he's from in the South, Jacksonville, Florida. Like, this is where I grew up. These are the halls that I walked. This is the street that I walked. This is my paper route. My mom's just like, okay, here's my school. Yeah. And and that's Taipei 101. I used to look at that. It's like it wasn't like a huge homecoming, and I'm like, Mom, you haven't been here in like 30 years. Like, isn't this exciting for you? She's like, yeah, it's exciting. Mm-hmm.
You know how Asian parents like to quell their own emotions.
Just like, Mom, damn. You know, but we did go to like she went to boarding school out there, so we saw her boarding school. We walked the campus of NTU, you know, but a lot of it was just, she said like a lot of the things that she used to do and walk around in the building, like it was all different, you know.
Yeah, I bet.
Mhm.
30
Like she
years.
barely recognizable, you know.
It's funny.
So you said your grandparents left China after the war. Do you have family still in China as well, or everyone's in Taiwan?
And this is where it's complicated, right? Because I lived in Shanghai, which is where I do have family, but I didn't see them. And I don't know why I didn't see them. And I say I don't know why because I don't know why. I don't know if it's because my grandma doesn't get along with them, or like the family doesn't get along with them, or if it's because I'm black. Just gonna be straight up here. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I don't know. You know, maybe my grandma's protecting me from the racism that I might experience. You know, the non-acceptance that I might experience. Because I heard the podcast where you were talking about your grandparents. Was that your grandparents, Jesse? I don't care who you bring home. It's fine.
Yeah, that was my aunt. Yeah.
As long as they're not black, okay?
Yeah.
If they're not black, it's fine. Anything else. It's like, damn, why you hate us so much? I don't understand. Like, we're humans too. Damn. I get it, though. I can laugh about it because, like, I've lived my whole life understanding, like, why they feel that way. And a lot of it is just not even their fault because it's just conditioning that they've had to, that they've been brainwashed by, honestly.
Let's dig into that because I think that was a big piece I'm like very curious about. Is it sounds like your grandparents were super embracing and like loving and like degaff that you're half black. But I'm seeing
The face.
going on. Maybe
They
it's all
got
for
they got there. They
got
got
there?
there. They didn't start there. My mom was going against the family, what the family wanted by marrying my dad, you know, which race was also a part of it. I don't want to paint a picture that like my grandparents were just absolutely racist and it was all about the skin color because it wasn't. It was more complicated than that, but it definitely was a factor, right? And then when my oldest brother was born, then it just had to change, right? Because now my grandparents and my Chinese side of the family is like, oh shit, okay, well, now there's a baby and he's Chinese and he's black. We love him. We've decided we want to be in his life. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
and that's what's so funny about it. when I look at people who like don't like somebody because of, they can say it's non-racial factors as to why they don't like a group of people, but it is, and it's racist, just period. And people will do anything they can to justify those thoughts and that ideology, but I can see it for what it is because I've lived it. And my family has lived it, and we realize that it doesn't fucking matter at all. You know? And if you actually get to know the human being for who they are, outside of these preconceived ideas about someone you've never met yet, then you'll get to see like, oh, got it. And that's how I was raised. I was raised by obviously both my sides and taught to embrace both my sides. And obviously on the Chinese side, because I don't look traditionally stereotypically Asian, it was, you know, there's pushback from that side. And what I had to learn was that as long as I have my family who accepts me for who I am and I don't have to prove that to them, I can just be Chinese because that's what I am. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter to them. Then I can carry those same vibes into the real world, right? Oh, you don't accept me as Chinese? Well, guess what? I don't give a fuck because I am. You know what I mean? And it's a completely different way of interacting with the world. I'm not asking for your acceptance. I already accept who I am, you know? And you see it in my content too. I'm not asking for acceptance. I'm showing how I was raised and how I embrace my own culture outside of whatever opinions may come to the forefront, right? And I think, because I only started making my own content about this like 5 months ago. It was during the pandemic I started. And I realized also that the idea that the Asian community did not accept me was pinned in the 1990s, right? From the anti-blackness that I experienced from the Asian community back then. And because I had this idea, the Asian community doesn't accept me from that age, it sort of didn't grow. I didn't grow with the Asian community's understanding in the same way that the Asian community did about their anti-blackness. So the acceptance that I'm feeling now, I'm just like, whoa, I didn't know that Asians would be like excited by the content I'm making or think it was funny or see me as one of them, because that's not what I was doing it for. I was doing it for me. I was doing it for my self-expression and showing people in general, not the Asian community, that however you identify is how you identify, especially if it's in your blood.
You know, everything you just said, I feel like a bit of envy almost, because you went through a lot of shit clearly growing up to like get to the point where your family is like totally embracing you and like empowering you and your sense of self. But it feels like all that did, you know, culminate in you feeling like super secure in your identity and like how you want to express that and wanting to like really own and be, you know, prideful of your Chinese heritage. And I think something that Jesse and I have talked about a lot is like how we denied our heritage growing up. Like we wanted desperately just to be like white, right? And
Yeah.
you know, we can't escape how we look, so we couldn't ever really escape the Chinese Taiwanese-ness, but we
Yeah.
wanted to deny it as long as possible. And it's like only until recently that we're trying to like rediscover that for ourselves. So
I feel you on that because there was times where I wanted to erase my blackness and be not necessarily white, but be like everyone else. And everyone else was white. And also the Asian kids that I was around, because my community was 50-50 white or 50-50 white and Asian, wanted to be white too, you know, or wanted to be part of the popular culture. Like, so I've experienced that too. I've also experienced, you know, going to a middle school that was in Roland Heights, which is primarily Asian. It's like 90%.
that's
Asian.
626.
Yeah, 66, baby. And I would hide in the car when my grandparents would pick me up because I didn't want people to know that I was Chinese, and I didn't want them to ask questions. You know, I was already getting made fun of for being black. I didn't want to get made fun of for being Asian too. You know, and I can't.
Yeah.
I've had to forgive myself, right? Because my grandpa is not alive anymore, and I look back at the way that he raised me, and I'm just like, it was so not synonymous with how other Chinese grandparents raise their grandkids. He would tell me he loves me every single time I saw him, every day. You
That's
know
so
what I mean?
sweet.
And so I'm just like, how could you, you little, like talking to my former little self hiding in the backseat, like, how could you do that? This man was saying he loved you, and no other Chinese parents
Yeah.
were doing that. How dare you? I had to forgive myself for that because
Yeah.
that's what, and also look back at that perspective and not carry it with me moving forward now, right? Because I was totally subject to what others were telling me to identify as and believe, and I was living my life in accordance to their value structures, right? Whereas now I'm like, oh, you're making fun of me for being Chinese? Well, you're the idiot here. I don't have to listen to you. I don't even have to. You're not going to live in my head rent free. You're going to get evicted. And also, I mean, right, like when you're a kid, you don't have choice. Like you have to go to the school, you have to be around those kids. I don't have to be around anybody I don't want to be around. That doesn't feed me. That doesn't support me.
We've talked a lot about how like our childhoods and how we grew up kind of like directed where we went as adults or like our behavior. But I think a big part of it that we tend to overlook is that we reinforce that on ourselves in a sense. Like it's baggage that we carry with us and we allow, as you said, to live rent free in our head. Like we're, in a
Dude.
sense, it's like self-sabotage. So
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you bring up that point because I think a lot of us struggle to identify that self-sabotage and figure out like why is it that I feel second place all the time? Like why do I let people get in my head? And part of the process of doing this podcast has been so great is because we're now kind of like the same place as you are where we're like we don't care what other people think about
Yeah.
our Asian identities. Like the purpose of this podcast is so that we can find what it means for us and like create that meaning
Yeah.
so that it is like a million times more powerful than what other people are thinking in terms of like stereotypes or preconceived notions and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Even having this conversation, right, is making us think in different ways and question, the sort of structures that we've been taught to live by that may no longer serve us, you know? And that's the reason why we feel like sometimes we're not adequate. And like, look, I'm not completely secure. Like I have to still deal with a lot of the things, but because I have that awareness, I can be like, no, Ryan, that's the conditioning. That's conditioning. You did do a good job. You did a good job. Tell yourself you did a good job, okay? Because you did. Don't, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
growing up in an Asian household, it's like even your accomplishments are just like even the top one accomplishments are like,
Yeah.
okay, but what's next? I'm not gonna give you a trophy for doing what you're supposed to do. And it's like, but damn, like, can you just give me like a nod or like a handshake or something? Damn, I feel like I did something here, you know?
I'm curious, was that what it was like when you were growing up? Like the
Yeah.
parenting structure was very Asian.
Yeah. Oh no, it was very Asian. See,
Okay.
like first of all, I was raised by my Chinese side. My parents are still together, and they raised me together. But like my entire Asian family lives in Los Angeles, so I was going
Okay.
to grandma's house every weekend with my cousins and stuff like that. We'd compete, we'd compete with each other with times tables and
Oh
stuff like
no,
that.
you're
Oh
You know
my
what I mean? We
so
were
God.
much more Asian than we were.
Peak Asian. But look, here's another thing: is like I didn't know that was Asian.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anything outside of my family to really compare it to.
Yeah.
Like we were just being us, and my Asian experience was very insular. I didn't have sort of like a lot of Asian friends that did Asian things that I hung out with. Yeah, I say that to say like I really did get the experience of just being myself for a while. A lot of ways it was a good experience because it made me very close with my family and it made my identity something that I didn't compare to others about or tried to prove so much about. But there was a lot of me trying to prove my Asianness when I first started really embarking on like, oh dude, I am half Asian. Like I know I strongly identify with black because society has deemed me black. But over the past several years, like really diving into learning the language and the history and trying to make Asian friends and going to China and living there, and going to Taiwan and speaking to my grandparents and my mom about our family's history and stuff like that. A lot of that started as me trying to prove it to other people, right? And then being very, very upset, depressed even when I was met sort of with like, what? You know? Or like a spectacle, like I'm a spectacle and not really accepted. It's just like, wow, can I touch your hair? Can we touch your hair? You know, it's so now it's like that still happens all the time, but I'm not like, that doesn't define me though. Like I define me. And that's made all the difference. And another experience I had, I modeled out there the whole time I was out there. I signed with this modeling agency, and when I signed with them, they literally straight up told me like, oh, it's a good thing that you're not darker because we wouldn't have signed you.
Yeah.
It's funny though. It's funny though because Chinese people are my people. I see them as my people, and I know they don't mean like their racism is not like KKK racism. It's like, no, these are just the facts, you know?
Yes.
Like these are just the facts. Like if you're darker, then we wouldn't want you. Like there's just facts.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't make us money.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I feel that myself when I go back to Asia because Jesse and I grew up in Southern California just like you, and I used to be like 5 times darker than this in peak summer. You know, I'd be like, take it all in. And I'd go back to Asia and it'd be like, that's why it stood out, is because I'm super
Colorism,
dark. Yeah.
And colorism is not even attached to just race. There is racism in China. But colorism was a separate issue, but when racism became so popular these days, colorism sort of blended into racism, right? Yeah. Because the colorism was a class thing in Asia.
Yeah.
And then when black people existed in these people's eyes, they were through the lens of how American media wanted to show us, or Western culture wanted to show black people. And unfortunately, Asians were subject to that conditioning. So you have this colorism, which is like, you must look like a ghost at all times. And if you don't, find some cream and rub that shit into your skin until you look like a ghost. And then right? It's like weaved into the beauty standards and the classism structure in not just China, but all throughout Asia. And then you have black people who like literally cannot change the color of their skin because they're just black. And so that negative view from the classist point of view is already there, right? And then you piggyback off of that and add the conditioning, the racist conditioning, right? And that comes from little things too, like Darky toothpaste, was it called? Blackie toothpaste?
Oh my God.
My mom used to brush her teeth with that shit when she was a kid growing up in Taiwan, right? And she wasn't thinking about that, like, you know, but I don't think my mom saw a black person until she, like in real life, until she went to UPenn. And that's 24 years of life, right? And then you imagine that, and, you know, you go to America, and then it's like a shock when black people there's like a diversity in the black community that you never were taught, right? I think that's what happened with my mom. It's like, oh, you know, and it sounds crazy. It's like, oh, black people can be smart and like they go to school. Like that's sort of like how deep it is, and the conditioning is. Like conditioning can really make you so racist without you even knowing that racism is even a thing. It's just like, that's just how it is. Like my modeling agency in China, like that's just how it is. If you were darker, we wouldn't want you.
Well, let's go into the media topic because you did some modeling in China, but you also do some acting here in the US, right? I'm curious about what assumptions people make or boxes they put you in, because we had another actor on a previous episode, Amy, and she had her own, you know, boxes that she's put in because she's stereotypically Asian looking. But I'm curious because you do have these two sides of you, and you can even speak Chinese. Like I'm curious what like roles you're trying to go after versus what people are trying to impose on you.
That's such a great question. And I listened to Amy's interview in its entirety, and I was like, wow, I connected this so much more than I thought I would. And I'm like, why aren't there more conversations like this? Anyway, I'm much more interested in paving my own way and making my own content. That's what Amy said too. Because like, it's like, I don't make content for the predominant culture's gaze. And I'm gaze, Gaze, just so we're clear. Yeah, I just want to make that clear. Because that's not expressing myself. If I'm making it for people outside of me that are in control of the industry so that they can put me on the map. So it's all about them. It's all about pleasing them and not about expressing myself. I know there's an in-between there, right? But I want what comes first and foremost, something that's funny to me, interesting to me, something that I'm passionate about. That needs to lead the project that I want to be a part of. I also think the more time that I spend on understanding who I am and what I want to do, the more I'll be in connection to the people who are making that kind of those kinds of productions. You know, it used to just be, when I first graduated from my MFA program, it used to just be like, well, I don't care, I'll just work on a CBS show and then I'll be famous, and like, you know what I mean? But like, I'm not really interested. Here's the thing, like, I'm gonna take a network TV job if I get it. Come on. I'm not above that. What I'm saying is, like, it's not necessarily it's not my dream. My overall goal is to do what my content is doing. It's to inspire other people to express themselves outside of other people's opinions, especially when it's the predominant culture. And in Hollywood, we see that a lot, right? Why do Asians have to fight tooth and nail to just get one project done? Same thing with Black people in a different way, and all people of color. I want us to get to a level where we just make it because we want to make it, you know, and we can be just as mediocre as a lot of these white productions are. You know, I don't like to compare white, Black, Asian. I don't like to do that. But like, when I say white, I mean the predominant culture. And that is white, right? And you have all these all these shows that are like not very good. And they can be not very good, right? I want to champion like Black mediocrity and Asian mediocrity. Like, we should be able to be mediocre and have mediocre shows too. We should have a diversity and not have to be like, you know, stand up for a TV show or a movie that we don't really like because it's Asian, because it's Black, because it's primarily people of color. But we do kind of have to, when we think of it in terms of, you know, establishing ourselves in the industry as we know it today.
You know, when you said that thing about like, why can't we have mediocre content too? I remembered a conversation I had with a friend when Crazy Rich Asians came out, but I think is phenomenal, not mediocre. It's certainly above average, and the range from there is, you know, personal opinion. But I remember, you know, talking very highly of that because number one, great movie. Number two, you know, all Asian, there's meaning behind that, whatever. And the person I was talking to was like, I mean, it was just another rom-com. I was like, but that's the point. Like, why do white rom-coms get like, you know, a star rating, whereas like this all Asian cast doing and also just another rom-com has to be told it's just another rom-com. It's I don't know.
Yes. They don't get it because they don't understand how much it means. It's funny hearing white people's opinions about Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians because they're really just viewing it as a movie in their own perspective, right? And so like they'll have an opinion that's completely not tied to culture at all. But like if you watch Crazy Rich Asians, that's just about culture, you know? If you watch Black Panther, that's all about culture. And like, if you're not a part of the culture, of course, you're not going to be able to really enjoy it that much, but that's your fault. That's your fault, you know, because we got to know your culture, whatever it is. I don't know what white culture really is, but I think it's just the predominant culture that we all have at one point in time during our childhood, or even people now have not escaped from trying to assimilate into it. Right. But if you are coming from the predominant, and you're watching a movie about, you know, if you're watching Black Panther or Crazy Rich Asians, of course your experience is going to be different. But I'll tell you, like, I was like weeping watching Black Panther because it was portraying Black people in a way that I wish I had as a child. and I wish that I ever had beforehand, right? Where like we are the most advanced people on the earth, right? Wakanda is the most advanced uh, infrastructure, technology, sciences in the world. I was like, oh my God, this is what we need, right? This is what we need. We need to show kids these positive examples of what you can do for your community, right? Like, I don't want to get too into it, but like a lot of rap music and a lot of hip hop culture is so demeaning to women, so demeaning to the community, talks about gun violence, right? And I can come at it from a perspective of understanding and compassion because that was forced onto us too by our circumstances. Like we are in poverty-stricken communities on purpose. Legislation brought that about, right? It's not their fault. It's not our fault. And then I can talk about Crazy Rich Asians and be like, I also cried there too, because I'm like, I've never got to see my people, Chinese, Asian people, all a part of the cast where there's no white savior involved.
Yeah.
In the wedding scene, I'm just like, wow, like Asian love, right?
Yeah.
You don't even, that's not even a concept. That wasn't really even a concept, really, in Asian American cinematic history. So I'm all about Crazy Rich Asians. I'm all about movies like Black Panther. I'm all about movies that just let Asians be Asians and let Black people be Black people, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just people.
I think also during this time after George Floyd, I think a lot of the Asian American community, and during COVID racism, the Asian American community has realized like, oh, we are people of color. And not only that, like the racism that we didn't experience was conditional. Like they will turn at us on any given moment, you know? And if that is the case, and we are people of color, let's understand other people of color's experience in this country and unite and find an understanding and a catharsis too of expressing the pain that you felt that you may not even know that you were feeling because you repressed it, because that's what we do. We're really good at that. Let's come together and find these bridges that we can fill the gaps between.
I do really feel like there has been a coming together across all people of color since
Yeah.
these crazy months that we have been
Yeah.
living in.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that it had to happen this
Yes.
way, but yeah.
Yeah. We've discussed it before, and it is very similar where, we have this idea that we can kind of just fly under the radar. Like people who present outwardly as Asian because you have all of these like model minority concepts and you think you
Yeah.
can just, exist without people bothering you, but it's proven not to be the case.
Yeah. I would say that Asians came to this country from cultures of honor and respect and were met with disrespect and xenophobia and refused to stoop to that level. So we put our heads down and understood our skill set and retained our honor and respect and found success in our own way. And to the people who disrespected us, that it seems like we're quiet and that we're domesticated and that we don't have a voice. But in reality, that's how we coped with the animosity and adversity that we faced when we got here. So I think that Asians are amazing. And now we're just at a turning point where we're realizing a further way in which we need to adapt and come
Yeah.
together.
I agree.
That's what it is.
Love it. All right. Well, that was heavy, but also uplifting near the end. So let's keep it uplifting and move into our fortune cookie because we always like to end on a sweet treat. Earlier, you talked about hip hop and rap and how those can oftentimes be more associated with like negative topics. But while we were scrolling through your page and the content that you make, we noticed that you have been promoting more acceptance and awareness of Chinese hip hop and Chinese rap. We wanted to ask what your favorite Chinese language artist is to plug them so that people can start listening to all this
Oh
cool
man, I
stuff.
mean, there's so many. I do listen to Higher Brothers rap group, and why I came to respect them so much is because I saw a documentary about them. I think it was on Vice, where they were interviewed about how they came to love rap so much. And they went to this old record store and they were pulling out rappers that like I had grown up on, like Rakim and Common and Big L. These sort of like rappers that changed the hip hop game, changed the rap game. One of the Higher Brothers rappers was like, "Yeah, we used to listen to this in our basement for like nonstop and really understood the cadence of how he was saying and what he was saying and why it was impactful and the rhythms." You know what I mean? I was like, "Oh, so y'all are really about this? Like this isn't like some cool trend, borderline appropriation thing for you. Like this is life for you." And so I'm a forever fan of theirs. Um, and that's hip hop, but also in like the R&B world, Eric Cho is like, I really do like his music a lot because it just like I'm an emotional sensitive person and like he really hits your heart every single time.
Awesome. Yeah, well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, if you have any questions for Ryan about himself or his experience, or you just want to chime in with comments about the episode, and reminder that we're still looking for listener story submissions. So write us in about whatever experience with this topic you have, or whatever you want at tellus.where-you're-from@gmail.com. Ryan, would you like to tell our listeners where they can find you?
You can find me in the streets. Now you can find me. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. My handle is Ryan Alex H, and maybe you'll see me on TV too. Got a project I'm working on. It's going to be on TV.
Exciting.
Well, streaming, so that's not really TV, but you know what I mean.
As cheap as it is, as anything can be these days.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Awesome. Come back next week. We'll have another fun episode for you then. But until then,
再见。
再见。